The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com. And good morning. Welcome to The Old School, a podcast about, among other things, the American education system, but also we dabble in foreign relations, we dabble in history and culture and food and sports, but we take a turn back to travel a little bit with this episode. And in this endeavor, I say good morning here, Dr. Bourgeois.
Hello, good morning. You are not in Texas, I can tell, because your phone is moving around and it looks like you're at some remote location about to talk about news or something.
Is it making you dizzy that the camera's moving around, or?
It's better than when it was sideways a few minutes ago. But definitely news. Are you holding?
Here's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why is it that everybody who takes a picture with an iPhone or does anything with an iPhone, it's always the vertical, it's never the horizontal? Why is that?
Depends on what you're doing. I do the horizontal, but I'm aware of that kind of thing.
There have been a couple of occasions where I have like taken photos for people because we're out and about and someone said, "Hey, could you take a picture of us?" And I say, "Oh yeah, sure." And my default is I take photos on my phone at the horizontal.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. Could you do it up and down? They don't know vertical. Could you do it up and down? I said, "Oh yeah, sure. Okay." And so it's like, for whatever reason, people are just keen to have the vertical view and not necessarily the horizontal view.
Well, they're pasting it on social media. They have those multiple pictures of their trip. It's like it says 4+ or something, meaning there's a lot of them, and they're all vertical pictures. And probably they're using AI to get rid of the backgrounds, and so it's just a picture of them smiling, and then their food that they're eating right below, or something like that.
By the way, I got to send you a photo of the food I had last night, which is not too bad. But
yeah, even holding back.
Yeah.
Well, no one knows where you are right now, so tell us your trip here, Miller.
Well, currently I am calling in from Helena, Montana, which is, of course, as everyone knows, the capital of Montana. And this is a part of, so I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but so the national parks has a program where kids in the 4th grade from August to August get into national parks for free. And you have a card, and basically anybody in the car with the fourth grader gets in for free.
Just that one.
Just whoever's in the car.
Oh, so you get in along with your fourth.
I mean, I get in for free also because I'm a veteran, but I'm not even bringing that up. Is because as long as you have the card and as long as the 4th grader is in the car with you, then that car gets in for free. Now you can't have like a caravan of aunts and uncles, but they'd have to pay. But whoever can fit in that car, that's who's allowed to enter into the park for free.
So that's what you have, is a car full of people?
Yeah, well, just the 3 of us right now. So, okay. But the in-laws make it 5. But no. So,
it's a great program. Is your daughter actually in 4th grade?
Yeah, she is. What do you mean? Of course she's in 4th grade.
She looks a little tall for 4th grade. I think you're misrepresenting that here, Miller.
No. What are you doing?
She's definitely smarter than 4th graders. I've spoken to her. I would say high school minimum.
Okay, you're hitting me in my soft spot. Yes, I agree with you. Yes.
When I'm right, I'm right.
But so anyway, in October during the fall break last year, we went to 3 national parks in Colorado. We went to the Great Sand Dunes. We went to Mesa Verde. and then we went to Black Canyon on the Gunnison. And then in March this year for spring break, we went to three parks in Utah. We went to Arches, we went to Canyonlands, and then we went to Capitol Reef. And so to kind of round out this year of national parks, although certainly not the end of our time in national parks, we have visited Grand Tetons, which is in western Wyoming, and I'm now in Helena, and on Monday, tomorrow, we start to drive up towards Glacier National Park on the Canadian border. And what's interesting is that you would think that a park so far away from anything along the Canadian border would not have that many visitors. But apparently, this is one of the busier parks in the national park system. So,
Wow. And you'll be there. So I'm looking at a map because I don't know where any of this is. I have a general idea that it's in the middle. Um, but you passed Yellowstone National Park. Did you put your foot in there at all?
we didn't, we were not that far north in Wyoming. So, Yellowstone is a little bit further north. We were more in south, um, more in the west central part of Wyoming. And then we were staying in Idaho. And then we went from Idaho directly into Montana. So we bypassed Yellowstone. The thought process was Yellowstone is a massive park.
Right.
It is, and looking at it on the map doesn't really do it justice because it is humongous. It's one of the larger parks that we have, and it may be the largest park as far as square area that we have in the national park system. But because it's so big, it did not seem like something that could be shoehorned in. It seemed like something that should be an entire trip by itself.
Well, that meant now I'm going to hold on to all of my Yogi Bear type jokes. This is not the moment. So it takes a lot of restraint from me, but I'm going to do it. So
hey, boo boo.
You have to do it. I'm not going to say picnic baskets. Won't do it. Oh boy. So I'm sorry about the digression. Where were you? You were in Glacier.
Well, yeah. So we'll make our way up to start making our way up to Glacier tomorrow, and then we'll spend about 2.5 days there in the park, and then Thursday we start the long trek back. And for giggles, this is what I like to do. I have a couple German friends who are following our progression, and they are typical Germans in that they do not believe in spending more than 2 hours at any one time in a car going in any one direction.
Wow.
They would either fly or take a train. And so when you start talking about the type of mileage, I mean, I'm halfway through the trip, roughly, maybe one day more. We're about halfway through the trip, and I've already clocked in over 2,500 miles. And so, and we still got the long trek back from basically the Canadian border back to Texas.
That's a lot
And
of
so,
benzene in Germany. That they would have to take out a second mortgage to pay for gas.
they start talking about my carbon footprint.
Well,
I'm killing the planet as I appreciate it at these various parks. But yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a ton of driving, but I like it, and maybe we can talk a little bit about today, some of that drive because the drive has been tremendous.
you're not driving right now as you talk.
No, I'm in a very comfortable Airbnb in Helena. So
Okay, so I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to buy a little stand for your phone. They sell them at popular stores, and it's there because you're like
is it
feels like
distracting you?
they're real easy. I'll gift it to you. I'll buy one and bring it over to your house.
You don't like the action
No,
orient
it's
movement of the camera?
hard enough this morning, but I mean, you seem to be coming in, coming out, moving around. But yeah, I actually thought you were driving.
No.
So what about your drive? You're driving this afternoon? You're about to leave? What's happening?
We're driving from here to Missoula today, and then tomorrow we drive from Missoula up to Kalispell, which is the kind of the swanky town
Oh yeah.
outside of Glacier. So
I looked at property there and homes. It's really expensive, if I recall.
yeah, I think if I must tell you, we talked about the idea that I was looking for property somewhere in the mountains
Mhm.
where I could retire in.
Yeah.
Idaho's jumped up on the list. So,
Well,
I mean,
tell us
Idaho,
about
I
Idaho. Because you didn't go down to any of the cities. You didn't go to Boise or
no,
anything. You just experienced the
the
mountains.
countryside. Yeah,
Yeah.
the countryside, the mountains, the fields, and someone once joked that Idaho was filled with white nationalists and Maharajis, but uh,
That's Eastern Oregon, the Maharajas. No, they had somebody else. What's a different name? Um,
but anyway, so but I'm telling you, it's popped up on the list now. I think if I had my druthers, I'm still leaning towards Colorado or Utah, but Idaho was a revelation.
wow. So they have open fields, rolling hills, and a lot of the things that you like.
You know what it was like? It was like driving through France, driving through the rural countryside of France. The landscape, the colors of the fields, um, the mountains in the background. It was absolutely stunning. And I know you've driven through Idaho, maybe more in the northern part of the state, but um, I got to tell you, that was, like I said, that was a revelation driving through Idaho.
Wow. Well, it's really close to Oregon, meaning you almost made it to God's country. You were right in there. You could almost see it probably. Um,
If
well, I'm
you know,
looking
if
at
you look, if you look into Oregon from Idaho, that's like the leeward side. That's not exactly God's country, is it?
um, I don't want to comment on any of that. I'm still trying to focus on the map here, but you were kind of in the foothills, right? You weren't in the because I see some pretty serious mountains there, and then you were in the rolling hill part.
Exactly.
Well, tell us about Grand Teton. I think that's the park that most people know about. I just know the name. I've never really been there.
And I think Grand Teton, I think gets overshadowed a bit by its cousin to the north, Yellowstone National Park, because Yellowstone was the first national park. For those who don't know a little bit about the history, there was a kind of a conservationist movement in the 1870s, led by a man named Carl Schultz, who was a German immigrant, but he's very passionate about protecting wildlife. And this is also the beginning of the Sierra Club. They were some of the kind of the leading voices to get started what Ken Burns called, and well, I don't know if Ken Burns came up with this title, but America's greatest idea, which is the national parks. And I think one of the things that Schultz talked about, and there are various names that kind of come up as you start learning about the environmental history of the United States. But one of the things that is a common refrain is the idea of preserving a place so that future generations can see the exact same landscape, the exact same nature that they were looking at and that they thought was worthy of protection. And so when I think about taking my daughter to national parks, when I think about, I mean, her first camping trip was when she was 6 months old. So we got her started early. And so whether we're talking about national parks, we're talking about state parks, it's been a kind of a long progression. And I think in the beginning, people didn't understand In the beginning, in the 1800s, people saw land as a resource, which it is. And so protecting it or preserving parts of it so that it could not be used for its natural resources, I think ran antithetical to how some people viewed the world. But over time, the government has been able to make the argument that no, this is important that we save some of this. Teddy Roosevelt during his presidency, um, he was actually um, some people called it kidnapping, but the and God bless it, the name's escaping me right now. But a very famous conservationist actually took him on a 3-day trip where he was out of contact. This is as he was president,
Wow.
out of contact through Yosemite for the purposes of making the point that Yosemite needs to be a national park. And Roosevelt, of course, was the leading voice to kind of make Yosemite a national park. And it had a lot to do with um, this conservationist whose name now I cannot. It's the guy whose name is associated with the redwoods in California. That park is named after him. But this is embarrassing. I'll put it in the notes or something like that. But he was gone for like 3 days, out of contact. And when the guy was done with him, Roosevelt said this place needs to be protected. And so for my daughter, it's important that she understands our connection with nature. And I'm not some I'm not some tree hugging hippie, but at the same time, I believe that there needs to be kind of a protection of wildlife. And the Grand Tetons was part of that. Grand Tetons became a national park or started down the road of being a national park because of John Rockefeller. Rockefeller was he's kind of the patriarch of that family. And so if you know anything about the Rockefeller name at all, you may know John Rockefeller. You may know Nelson Rockefeller, who was vice president under Ford in the mid 70s. So that name has been around. Rockefeller Plaza in New York City, many people know about that. But Rockefeller was one of the leading agents of making Grand Teton a national park. And so the park itself sits outside of Jackson Hole. And so most people are familiar with Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's the place of the stars. And we drove through it once. And after that, I took the roundabout, the bypass, because I didn't want to go through that town again. It's just a bunch of people. It's whatever Jackson Hole was, it cannot be what it is now. Because you think about the old timers who talk about Jackson Hole, you think about the celebrities that talk about the first people to go there, the first celebrities to go to Jackson Hole, and they talk about this charming, this kind of quaint, this kind of rustic mountain town. It is not that now. It is back. It is bumper to bumper traffic, tourists. Just people walking around carrying around lattes. I mean, it's not a place driving through that you would want to spend time in. Now, it's still a beautiful town. It's still in a beautiful area, beautiful setting. But bloody hell! I mean, I did the bypass after that first that first trek through the town. So that's where Grid Teton is.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the people because I know the right at the as we were coming out of COVID or realizing we needed to be outdoors, people descended on the parks, and they had record numbers. And what's the experience now as far as having time to yourself, or are you surrounded by a lot of people?
I think you're still surrounded by a lot of. It depends on the park, Like when we were in Black Canyons on the Gunnison, which is in northwest Colorado, that's still a fairly unvisited park, and so you had time to yourself to reflect. And I would imagine in almost any park, you would have a chance of quiet reflection to do, as Thoreau would suggest, to listen to God, to hear God, because you're out in nature and you're away from the throngs, the masses. But I think, yeah, I think COVID kind of drove everyone outside. Now, unfortunately, it drove people outside who had no experience with being outside. It drove a bunch of indoor cats out into the wilderness. So there's some people doing stuff, and there's people still doing stuff that beggars the imagination. You know, people going on a hikes in tennis skirts. It's like no sunscreen, no protection, just waltzing out there like they're walking through the neighborhood. And
Well, they have their cell phone so they can document the experience.
it's it's hard to Instagram how cute you are if you're not wearing your tennis skirt.
Yeah. But,
But
so have you seen any wild animal or wild animals plural here, Miller?
so one of the things that the Grand Tetons has tried to do is they've really tried to get people to slow down through the park, because the problem with that part of the country is that it's wide open and that it's quote unquote empty. And so it's like the Indianapolis 500 sometimes on those highways and interstates. People are just rip roaring through that area. But in the park itself, they try to keep the speed limits down because, for one, it's just out of safety of the people driving. But two, none of the animals know that it's a road. It's just something to cross to get from one place to another place.
Mhm.
And in Grand Teton, one of the big problems, not a problem, but one of the things that they have is they have a lot of moose. They have a lot of bears that'll cross the streets. And unfortunately, especially at night, some tourists have plowed into some mooses or bears in, over the years. And so because of that, they have to make special uh, announcements to make sure that people pay attention. We only saw um, deer, and so there's a huge uh, population of deer that goes through almost the entire state of Wyoming into Montana, south down into Colorado, or east or west into Idaho. And the state of Wyoming, the national park system, has done a lot of work to try to track their migration patterns. And um, we're not talking about deer like in your neighborhood kind of deer. We're talking about these are some of the deer that are found in mountainous country. Not necessarily bighorn sheep, but these bigger deer. And they've done a lot of incredible work. Like, for example, there's an overpass in Wyoming that runs along a major migration route for these deer. And what was happening was that these deer were migrating across this interstate, and they're getting plowed over by 18 wheelers and minivans. And so what they did was they created a overpass of nature, and it gives the deer a safe place to cross over. And I think fatalities and injuries and accidents have cut down tremendously as they continue down southwards or northwards or wherever they're going. So the deer are the big part of what you might see. And of course you see the little animals, the chipmunks, the little cute animals that make my daughter giggle. But
The harmless
that's
squirrel.
squirrels seem harmless in nature, but in the neighborhoods they're horrific.
Yes. Well, you seem relatively wide awake. It's kind of tiring to travel at your age, isn't it?
My age? What are you talking about? I'm only 55, for God's sake.
So,
So, but no, but yeah, it's tiring. We had a pretty tiring day yesterday, spending time with some friends of ours. Um, they have these side by sides. They're kind of like souped up, enlarged go karts, and they're all wheel terrain vehicles. And so we went up in the mountains north here, and from Helena, they have a cabin, and so we kind of just exploring the woods. And so So yeah, so I'm tired, but at the same time, there's still so much ahead of us, and I'm still energized for the trip. So
Well, we're doing something a little different. We're going to have a two-part single episode because we want to talk about Glacier National Park, and you're about to be there, so there'll be an abrupt stop. I think it should be as abrupt as possible, so it's really awkward. You'll have another moving camera someplace, and then you'll tell us about your experience almost in Canada.
Grand Teton. Before we do the abrupt stop, is I think Grand Teton deserves a little bit more love than it gets. I mean, obviously, no one's starving in Grand Teton. I mean, they're doing fine as far as the national park goes, but it's not as visited as Yellowstone, and perhaps for good reason. Yellowstone is a much bigger splash, and Grand Teton is basically centered around three peaks. And you might think, why would you make a park out of three peaks? But those three peaks are pretty impressive, and so is the landscape around it. And as I mentioned, there's also migratory patterns that were taken under consideration as to why this place was preserved in the first place. And so I really enjoyed the time there. It was an accessible park. It wasn't gargantuan. It wasn't filled with trails that were impossible to do. I mean, we did a couple of trails and a couple of hikes, and I just like, my daughter, she'll bring a sketchbook with her and she'll start sketching the things that she sees. And, for me, as a father and as someone who cares about why the parks were created in the first place, it does my heart good. One, that I know that she will not be one of the clueless visitors to the parks. And not to bag necessarily on the clueless visitors, we all have to start at some place. But as long as you like continue to learn every time you go to a park about how to do things, how to behave, how to conduct yourself, how to interact with nature, how to interact with creatures. Because I mean, we've heard some stories lately, especially in this area, of some really dumb tourists trying to get the perfect Instagram photo right next to a elk, and the elk, by the way, not on Instagram and not really caring about your photo on Instagram. And so some tourists have met some unfortunate ends. And so it's just, it's a learning process, and and I don't begrudge anybody who goes to a park and doesn't know how to behave yet or how to do things, because I didn't either. I mean, everyone's got to go through a process to learn. As long as you understand that you have to learn, as long as you understand that there are things to adjust and how you act in a park as opposed to how you act at the neighborhood park.
But that scene you were fleshing out about the elk was kind of exciting. I was thinking you would go into more detail uh, about the incident.
Well, no, there's been people, and they get too close to the elk, they get too close to the bisons, they get too close to the mooses. I don't know why it's not called meese. If goose or geese, why aren't moose meese? But whatever. So they get too close to these animals, and they think the animals are props. They think these animals are just background scenes for their own film that they're making about their life. And it beggars the imagination why you think, or why anybody would think, being that close to those kind of animals is a good idea. It suggests an understanding of the universe that at best is incomplete on the role of the tourist. And I hope I'm not offending anybody, but I mean, God Almighty, what are you doing?
No, you're helping people because either those pictures are going to be on social media on their account, or they're going to be on the evening news.
it's,
One or the other.
it's a story. It's a potential story of extremes. Either animals become objectified as props to be put in photos, or someone ends up in a hospital, or worse. You know.
That'll be the
And
little quote at the
you
beginning
don't,
of the episode.
what's that?
That'll be the quote at the beginning of our episode from Mr. Miller. I wonder, what are they talking about?
Jeez almighty. I don't know. So, yes. So right now I'm in Helena, which is a nice little town. Um, and that's the other thing we should probably talk about at some point. Just the nature of a city in this part of the world, this part of the country, is not as it is in other parts of the country. You don't see skyscrapers, you don't see those kind of buildings, and it's charming in a way, it's accessible in a way. Um, there is a kind of and I don't mean to kind of patronize the region, but there's like a down to earthness to the people we have met thus far, whether they are, no matter who they are or what they are. And so, um, I
Well,
don't know.
tell us more. I mean, the more I think about it, we could probably do a whole episode up north because this is you transition to something that we've never talked about, that type of a town.
Well, we talked about it briefly when we were talking about Kansas, and that people tend to disregard this portion of the country as simply something to fly over to get from one coast to the next. And for me, there is a culture here that is quite different from anything that you might find, even in some place like a godforsaken city like Dallas or something, or there's a huge difference between Atlanta, and I'm not just talking about size wise, but something like Atlanta and something like Helena or something like Casper, Wyoming. These are cities only called such because a bunch of people happen to be in the same area at the same time. But in no other way is there a kind of a city attitude. I grew up in a city. I grew up in kind of a typical city, the kind of city you would see on a show like The Wire, for example. And, and so, um, and and so I have one notion of a city, and there's the cities that you typically think of are large, they are impersonal, they are distant, they are superficial in some ways as far as the kind of the nature of the city. And then you get to a place like Helena or Casper or Cheyenne. It's not like I've spent a ton of time in any of those places, but the people I've met, it seems like a very large country town. That is the kind of the feel that I get when driving through Helena, when driving through Casper or what have you. This is just like the small Texas town where your grandparents lived that you used to visit on occasion. And it has just a little bit more people in it. And so it's not a city in a kind of a personality sense. It's only a city in like a population sense.
So it's more of a town feel. Um,
It is.
but if you go to the city center, the downtown, are there restaurants? Is it vibrant, or are things closed down because of the economy? What's the feel there?
Well, in Cheyenne, there is a downtown area, and of course, with Cheyenne and with Helena, the downtown is centered around the Capitol building, as they are the capitals of their respective states. And so you do have a small quarter that might be considered a kind of a government district. And yes, if there's going to be restaurants, it may be in and around that area. Uh, Casper, their restaurants are kind of more off to the south of the city. Downtown area is a little bit older. Um, and so yes, I mean you can find a couple of restaurants. You're not going to find a bunch. If you did like a Yelp listing of the best restaurants in Casper, Wyoming, I'm sure a Subway comes in at number 18 or something. But I mean, beyond that, it's there. So there are a few restaurants here and there. there is a vibrancy might be the wrong word. I'm not sure I would use that term, but there is certainly a livability to it, and it's not a decaying town. It may be a stagnant town. It may not be growing as much as maybe some people would like, but it's not like it's in its last death throes, as it were.
Good to know. Um,
Yeah.
that would be depressing. But you're going to Missoula, and I understand you're going to have steak in Missoula. Is that your plan?
Well, the plan was to have steak last night, and it didn't happen.
Oh, well,
And
that's why
so, but
I'm waiting for the steak picture. So you're in Montana.
well, I mean, surely we can figure out a steak between here and when we leave. And so,
Oh,
um, the only problem is I'm not really a steak guy, but certainly I can appreciate a good steak. And so, I'm sure a steak
you're
is
putting
my
that on your
future.
list of foods that we've never really talked a lot about steak. You don't like steak.
Well, I like steak fine. I mean, I don't seek it out.
You don't like it.
I don't like it.
You like
it.
cheesesteak with provolone.
I do like cheesesteak with provolone, yes, and not with cheese whiz. And I don't care who's listening. I don't care what you say.
We spent like
Cheese.
2 hours talking about that before. Well, I want to say the steak, and you'll probably get a little steak and not a big old ribeye if you're not a steak eater.
So get something. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so that's where we are now, and maybe it's time for the awkward pause.
Well,
Um,
and we may
we
not,
get
I mean, we may get 2 episodes out of this. To me, it feels like, we have a part one and then a part two, because there's a whole lot more ahead of you in this trip.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we're going to, like I said, we're going to be up in near Canada for a few days, and then
Mhm.
start to trek back. And so there could be a lot to talk about.
That's what I'm
Maybe
thinking.
another episode.
Yeah, let's not rush it. Like some of those drivers going through the parks. We don't want to do that.
All right. Well, if that seems like a kind of a clean break, and so we will stop here. Um, yeah. So we'll catch you next time. Next time I call, maybe I'm calling from the road. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But hopefully, our next episode will be with me in Texas. Who knows? We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, nice landing here, Miller. I think we nailed that one.
Okay.
All right. I'll see.
Hey,
Oh,
it's an Olympic tie-in. Good job.
what? Oh, there went the ending. It just fell apart. Say auf Wiedersehen here, Miller.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.